There was a time when you didn't need to fly to Italy to feel Italian, you just had to walk down Mulberry Street. Smells of fresh cannoli in the air. Old men arguing in Sicilian. Red checkered tablecloths. Saints on the walls. And Sinatra echoing from corner cafes. This was Little Italy more than a neighborhood. It was a world. But what happened? Today, just a few blocks remain. The signs are there, but the spirit feels thinner. What was once one of New York's most iconic enclaves is now fighting to survive, caught between memory, tourism, and a city that never stops changing. In this video, we're uncovering 10 things you probably didn't know about Little Italy. The real history, the people, the legends, the losses, and what still lingers in the smell of garlic and the sound of church bells on Mulberry. Because if you think Little Italy is just a few restaurants and souvenir shops, you don't know the half of it. Long before Little Italy became a tourist attraction, it was a place of hard beginnings and raw survival. In the late 1800s, the area known as Malberry Bend was an infamous zone of the most overcrowded, crime-ridden, and poorest sections of Manhattan. Tenements were stacked wall to wall, with families of 10 or more crammed into tiny, windowless rooms. But for thousands of Italian immigrants, this was a first chance. They had fled poverty, political unrest, and famine back home, hoping that in America they could build something better. Instead, they arrived to slums, discrimination, and brutal labor. And still, they endured. They built homes, opened shops, shared food, raised families. The streets may have been dirty, but the culture was rich. Mulberry Street, once a symbol of hardship, became the beating heart of what would be called Little Italy. By 1910, Little Italy had reached its peak. Nearly 10,000 Italians packed into just a few blocks, making up around 90% of the neighborhood's population. It wasn't just a community, it was a world apart. The language was Italian. The food was homemade. The sidewalks were filled with fruit stands, shoemakers, barbers, and children playing stickball. You didn't have to leave your block to find a priest, a midwife, a butcher, or a tailor who knew your family by name. It was loud, it was chaotic, it was tight. But for many, it was the first place in America that felt like home. This was where generations began with nothing but hope, grit, and spaghetti sauce simmering in the background. In 1926, a group of Neapolitan immigrants held a small street procession in honor of San Gennaro, the patron saint of Naples. They carried a statue through Mulberry Street, lit candles, and served food to neighbors. It wasn't just about religion, it was about holding onto a piece of home. That small gesture turned into one of New York's most beloved traditions, the Feast of San Janeiro, held every September. What began as a one-day procession became an 11-day festival filled with lights, parades, live music, and enough sausage and peppers to feed the 5 boroughs. It's a celebration of faith, family, food, and survival. Even now, nearly a century later, the heart of Naples still beats in the middle of Manhattan at least once a year. While Manhattan's Little Italy shrank over the decades, many say that the soul of Italian New York never left it, just moved north. Today, the Arthur Avenue section of the Bronx is considered by many locals to be the true Little Italy. Here, the traditions didn't just survive, they thrived. Old-school butchers, pasta shops, bakeries, and delis still line the street. You'll find families who've been running the same storefronts for generations. The mozzarella is made fresh, the espresso is strong, and the accents haven't faded. This isn't a movie set for tourist sites' living, breathing heritage. In Arthur Avenue, Italian-American culture isn't just remembered, it's practiced every single day. And in a city that changes by the minute, that's no small miracle. Little Italy didn't just shape families, it shaped icons. Legendary filmmaker Martin Scorsese was born and raised right on Elizabeth Street. Surrounded by the rhythm of Italian life, the intensity of the streets, and the weight of family. His childhood memories, the corner stores, the church bells, the old men playing cards became the backdrop for some of the most powerful films in American cinema. Mean Streets, Goodfellas, Raging Bull Day were all love letters to the world he came from. And he wasn't alone. Robert De Niro, another titan of the screen, spent time in Little Italy and the surrounding neighborhoods. These streets helped shape their art, their voices, their stories. What they gave to film, Little Italy gave to them first. After more than 2 decades of planning, 2024 marked the long-awaited opening of the Italian-American Museum at 151 Mulberry Street, Wheatright, in the heart of what's left of Manhattan's Little Italy. The museum isn't just about artifacts or nostalgia. It's about preserving a story, one of migration, struggle, pride, and identity. Inside, you'll find photographs, oral histories, family heirlooms, and everyday objects that once filled the homes of first-generation immigrants. For a community that helped build New York and yet so often gets overlooked, this museum is more than a cultural space. It's a long-overdue homecoming. A permanent tribute to the people who turned a few city blocks into something unforgettable. For decades, Little Italy was inseparable from the shadow of the Mafia. It wasn't just rumor, it was reality. The narrow alleys and back rooms of Mulberry Street were home to real-life figures who later inspired Hollywood's most iconic mob stories. The neighborhood gave rise to names that became legends in organized crime bosses, enforcers, families. It was a world of codes, loyalty, and fear. Restaurants doubled as meeting places, and the line between community and control was often blurred. Movies like The Godfather, Goodfellas, and Donnie Brasco borrowed directly from the streets of Little Italy. And while many locals hated the stereotype, the truth is, some of that darkness did live here. It's a complex legacion of power, fear, and family, all wrapped in marinara and silence. At its height, Little Italy stretched over 40 square blocks, a tight-knit web of families, faith, and food. But today, it's barely a few streets long, a postcard version of what once was. Over the years, rising rents, changing demographics, and the natural wave of generational migration transformed the area. Young Italian Americans moved to the suburbs, and newcomers, especially from neighboring Chinatown, filled the vacuum. Slowly, the Italian language faded, and so did the local businesses. Now, Chinatown and Little Italy overlap, and in some areas, blend. What remains is more symbolic than residential. The red, white, and green banners still hang, but many of the people who built this place are long gone. In a neighborhood that's lost so much, Cafe Polalmo is still standing. For over 50 years, it's been a sweet sanctuary on Mulberry Street, known far and wide for its legendary cannoli. Founded by Baby John DeLutro, the cafe became more than a dessert spot. It became an institution. DeLutro earned the nickname the Cannoli King, and to this day, locals and tourists alike line up for the flaky shell, the perfect filling, and a taste of the old neighborhood. Cafe Polalmo doesn't just serve pastries, it serves a memory, a reminder of when every block smelled like espresso and powdered sugar, and when Italian New York wasn't something you had to search for, it was everywhere. If there's one place that captures the soul of old-school Little Italy, it's Rossi and Company. Founded in 1910, it began as a simple record shop, selling Italian music to homesick immigrants longing for the sounds of Napoli, Palermo, or Calabria. But as the neighborhood evolved, so did the store. Rossi and Company became a beloved gift and souvenir shop, filled to the brim with Italian flags, religious figurines, classic CDs, espresso sets, and trinkets that speak to a life lived between two countries. More than a store, it's been a fixture of the San Gennaro festival since the very beginning. For over 100 years, the shop has been part of every celebration, every procession, every crowded September evening on Mulberry Street. Walking into Rossi and Company feels like stepping into a different time. It's one of the last living links to a Little Italy where almost every storefront had an accent and every customer had a story. In a world of rapid change, this little shop remains a quiet but powerful symbol of pride, memory, and resilience. Little Italy isn't what it used to be. The voices are quieter, the streets more polished, the soul a little harder to find. But if you look closely behind the espresso machines, beneath the fading signs, you'll still feel it. A neighborhood that once fed dreams, shaped legends, and welcomed generations with open arms. It's easy to forget that places like this were built on hard work, family, and faith, block by block, over 100 years ago. And even though the crowds today may come for photos and pasta, the story behind Little Italy is real, deep, and unforgettable. So tell us, Have you ever walked these streets? Do you remember the old shops, the voices, the smells? Or maybe you've only heard the stories and longed to see it for yourself. Drop a comment and share your memory or your curiosity. And if you'd like to see a longer, deeper dive into the history of Little Italy, just let us know. We'd love to keep telling these stories, because some neighborhoods deserve to be remembered.